Welcome to another episode of the Data Science Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Cole, and our guest today is Janet George. Janet is a Group Vice President of Autonomous Enterprise. She's worked with a bunch of companies in Silicon Valley, including Oracle, Apple, eBay, Western Digital, Accenture as well, and more. She's currently co-authoring a book to assist companies in their AI transformation. Janet, how are you doing today?
Great. Thank you, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Awesome. So you've pretty much worked with many of the large names in Silicon Valley. So you're bringing sort of a wealth of background. And I think the question that I have in my mind right at the outset is, what is the autonomous enterprise?
All right. So when you think about an autonomous enterprise, what we want to do is think about this enterprise that will actually be powered by ML and AI at its core. So the DNA of this company is very much treating data as a first-class citizen, not treating data as a second-class or a third-class citizen. And what that translates to is really having all of the modern technologies in place in order to mine your data at scale, to both grow your top-line revenue as well as to cut some major operational cost.
Right. So a lot of companies right now are undergoing like digital transformations. And, when you ask, like when I ask, folks who are undergoing a digital transformation, because I'm like, what on earth does that mean? I feel like I get a different answer every time. Is that your experience as well?
Oh, yeah, very much so, right? It's not clear. We've been doing digital transformations for a very long time now. For the last decade, we've been doing digital transformations. But if you ask me, are these companies prepared to handle AI and ML as an existential threat in the next 5 years? The answer is no, right? Are these companies storing data, mining data to actually inform their business and to grow their top line revenue? The answer is no. They may be doing it in small snippets, but they're not doing it as a whole. Like you can think of these trillion-dollar companies, they're actually mining data as part of their DNA, right? So take Amazon or take Apple or take Google or any of these bigger companies. They're all data-driven companies. They're all companies that are prepared to handle the ML AI existential threat. And that's what we're talking about when we say, are these companies in doing AI transformations or are they doing data transformations different from your traditional digital transformation?
Yeah. That makes sense. You've said existential threat a couple of times. What threat specifically are you referring to?
So when you're not powered by using data, you're basically going into your market a little bit uninformed. You're not having data driving your business. So let me give you a specific example of this, right? Do you have a really good understanding of your customer base? Is your data telling you what these customers are consuming on a daily basis, and not the first level of BI analytics, but going double click and triple click down, right? So really understanding your customers. It's like if you were in the business of doing, for example, personalized health or selling products and then moving to a personalized health. So let's say you were a pharmaceutical company and you sold a lot of products. In the world of AI, you might need to change your business model. And you're changing your business model using AI to understand how to provide personalized help to your customers. Quite different from when you're selling products. Let's take a traditional storage company. Let's say you were basically just selling storage products. And now in the world of AI, you're not doing just storage products. You're doing a lot more than storage products. You're going up the stack and you're going to actually mine the data and go look at what your customers are using on a day-to-day basis. Where is the need? What do you need to give them in order to serve your customers?
Right. So it's using AI, machine learning to better understand in these two examples, better understand your customer, and using data to understand your customer. You mentioned, and I'm gonna push on this a little bit, but companies have been using creating data warehouses and have been doing analytics for years. But I feel like you're advocating for something, slightly different. Like it's, you sort of said, going beyond just your typical sort of BI, which is typically, looking backwards and doing sort of descriptive analytics, right? But what do most companies, when you're working with companies, like where do you feel they fall short, right, of that vision of the autonomous enterprise?
So let me give you another example. Maybe I'll talk about energy sector so it can be really clear. Let's say in the traditional digital transformation or data transformation, you were looking at data, you were mining the data, and you were producing dashboards. And the dashboards basically told you, hey, I've got all these wind turbines and they're in Iowa and they're massive wind turbines. And you're looking at how these wind turbines are performing. When are they going up? When are they going down? What's actually happening, right? That would be your traditional digital transformation. You have dashboards, you have BI, you have a good sense of the health of your company. In an AI world or an ML world, you're not just looking at when your wind turbines go up and down, you're rather trying to predict. What are you predicting? You're predicting icing conditions in winter. So you can save up to 500 million in cost, operational cost. Or you're doing temperature testing, temperature sensing, or you're doing wind predictions, right? These are going to give you a lot more depth about your wind turbines rather than just reporting out how your health metric of your wind turbine looks. Rather, you're going to look at your business far more holistically.
Yeah. So it sounds like the difference is using, data from your, from your company, just that you've been collecting for, years and years and years to better understand your business, and actually looking to use AI machine learning to actually make decisions, right? Autonomously, right? So without maybe, sort of human intervention, human in the loop. So that makes sense, right? Is that actually using AI to make the decisions, but what role do humans have, right, in the autonomous enterprise? Because when I think of autonomous enterprise, I'm worried, that there's gonna be no jobs, right? We're just all gonna be replaced with models. But is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying
Good.
that, humans will never be irreplaceable. They'll not be replaced by machines because we'll just keep going higher and higher. Look at the car industry, right? Of course, there's going to be the cars that are run autonomously, but then is a human required or not required? We're still in the car, right? It's just going to save us time. We're not going to do the driving, but we're still in the car. And so what we're going to do is going to change. So if today I'm spending a lot of time mining my data, looking at data quality issues, I'm trying to do formats and schemas, I'm so far away from being an autonomous enterprise. But if I'm moving closer to that spectrum of being an autonomous enterprise, then I'm mining my data automatically. I'm streaming this data. I'm looking at my data quality checks through machine learning agents that are actually going to look at that data. I'm no longer going to be very schema bound on the data. I'm not going to enforce the schema from the get-go. I'm going to have a dynamic schema. My data is just going to onboard itself rather than have 100 people sitting there onboarding the data into these traditional application tools, right? Think about it, right? That's what I'm calling autonomous enterprise. So you're cognitively automating many of the first order, second order tasks that are manual, very, very time consuming. We're not talking about level 5 where the enterprise completely runs on its own without people. Mm-hmm. That's not what we're talking about. When we say autonomous enterprise, we're saying data is really pivotal to the organization. It's a data-driven culture. We're going to use intelligence, not just data. We're going to convert data into intelligence that's then going to drive our markets, our customers, the way we operate, the way we build products. It's going to inform every aspect of our business. That's what an autonomous enterprise is. And it's going to be powered by data. So, and not just data that is being created internally in the company, but data that's also created externally. So you've got third-party data, you've got diverse data sets, you've got data coming in from the internet, that's product reviews, product information, customer usage patterns, other things like weather affecting your business. If it does, if you're in the energy sector, weather is certainly a big component that affects your business. So depending on all the aspects of data that's affecting your business and helping you be competitive in that marketplace, you're going to mine that data. Today, we don't operate our businesses looking at every aspect of the data. We do it manually, and we do it no science involved. We do it sort of haphazardly. And that's what's going to change in an autonomous enterprise with the leaders versus the followers.
Got it. So if I want to be a leader, right? Like what recommend? I mean, Other than reading your book, what recommendations do you have? Like, where should I start? Like, okay, I'm sold. I want to create more of a data-driven culture than I have today. I want to understand sort of that gap of where we need to be versus where we are today. Like, what should we do next?
I think the first step to being a data-driven company is to really address the culture. Are you ready culturally as a company to become a data-driven company, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you don't address the culture, I think any strategy is not going to be executed well, simply because culture will eat strategy for breakfast every single day. So we want to tackle the culture first. But after we tackle the culture, let's do a data maturity assessment model. Like, how far in the data maturity are you? Are you level 1, level 2? Have you adopted modern technologies like the cloud? Have you adopted modern technologies like autonomous security patching, autonomous provisioning, autonomous everything, right? From a software stack. Do you have the right modern technologies in your company? Or are you still powered by primitive technologies like sitting in a data center, bare metal, operating on old compute storage technologies, that networking, everything old, right? Versus newer cloud technologies, edge technologies, so on and so forth. And then your toolkit. Are you really operating on a data science platform? Do you have these platforms put in place? And then are you solving for outcomes? What outcomes are you solving for? And are those of strategic importance to the company?
So you mentioned, culture being critical, right, and important. Like, what specifically are you referring to? Are you referring to, like, and how do you arrive at that culture, right?
Yeah.
Are you talking specifically about changing the mindset in terms of how decisions are made, like being more data driven,
yes,
less sort of finger in the wind,
yes,
based on my experience, I think we should go left instead of right.
That's right.
Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to. And also it's a board level commitment, right? The board has to be very involved in the transformation process of a company. It can't be just the executive team that's deciding that, hey, we're going to suddenly change our company to become a data-driven company. This is a board-level strategic planning where the company has to decide, I'm going to become a data-driven company to better compete in the existing markets and to go into new markets, adjoining customers, so on and so forth. So once that conversation and that commitment happens, then there is investment that needs to flow. You can't take a company that's 30 years or 20 years or even 5 years and suddenly change its business model. Can't do that. Mm-hmm. You need the board level commitment on the investments. Once you get the investments, then you're prepared to say, what are some of the tacticals? Let's assess the maturity. Let's do an assessment on our technologies. Where are we at with our technologies? Have we adopted cloud? Is it public cloud? Is it private cloud? Is it on-prem? And these technologies are just infrastructure that enables the outcomes. So really have to focus on what the outcomes are that the company is going to do. How are we going to grow our top line revenue? What does that look like? And how will data power the growth of our top line revenue? So to give you another example, let's say that you're a manufacturing company and all you did was sell storage your whole life. And now you're going to actually go become an autonomous enterprise. So you're going to go beyond selling storage products to actually go mine the data that is sold inside your storage products with the permission of your customers. And then you're going to add a whole lot of value add services to your customers, creating entire $1 billion revenue streams, because you've not just become a storage provider that's selling storage products, but you've now actually gone and mined the data that the customers are storing within your storage products, and you're offering them a whole lot of new value add services. That's one new business line that you can create from that. A second one would be to say, maybe I'm just going to go into the autonomous car industry and I'm going to store all of that autonomous car data into my storage devices. And then I'm going to mine that data and provide near real-time directions with that data, or I'm going to provide some value. So this is what we call autonomous enterprises. Amazon is a great example, right? Amazon started with books, and then they very quickly went into the cloud business, and then they went into the Kindle business, and it's all the different businesses. Now they're getting into healthcare. How are they able to do this? If their primary DNA is books or e-commerce, and they're going into a completely separate business like infrastructure, how are they able to do that? That's because they're very much a data-driven company. And you can see Facebook is another example. They started out with social, and now they're getting into metaverse. And this metaverse is a completely different business. if you think about it, from being a traditional social network.
Yeah. Well, I think, there's some companies, I think Amazon is a good example where, my understanding is that AWS was sort of born from how they were running their e-commerce business, right? So they were realizing that, the what we've actually built internally could theoretically be essentially sold as a service to to other companies out there, right? Other businesses out there.
Exactly. And how did they know that? They were very, very good. They had an obsession about their customers. They mined pretty much all the data, so you knew what books you were buying. If you bought this book, you might like this other book. So there was
Right.
a lot of collaborative filtering, machine learning algorithms at work behind the scenes, mining the data, knowing this is what the customers will want and need, and then making decisions around how to grow the business.
Right. And the infrastructure that was required to do that sort of analysis, right? They had a whole sort of dynamic process for standing up infrastructure, and providing that as a service was a natural sort of extension, and obviously a great idea because AWS has been growing by leaps and bounds and is incredibly profitable for Amazon as an example. So I think that that can be quite daunting, though. Like, not everybody has the talent of say an Amazon, right? And has but I think how do you see a company getting from A to B? I mean, yes, you said you still got to start at the board level. It has to be a board level decision, and there's got to be a certain amount of investment. But I mean, where is that investment, right? Is that investment in people? Is that investment in tools? Like, where are you putting that investment?
So that investment has to start with modernizing the technology stack first and foremost. And then it has to go into the people, it has to go into the processes, because it's not important to just bring the technologies in, but people have to consume the new technologies. People have to consume what is being built. And so the investment is broken down into different aspects of growing that data-driven business, right? The first aspect would be modernization of the technologies and the tools. The second is investment in the people. How do you upskill, reskill, and
Right.
get your people on board with the new business strategy of how the company is going? And then the last one is really enablement through processes, enablement through structure, enablement through access of the new data, if you will, that's available to other
Right.
people.
And then what role is driving, the company towards the autonomous enterprise? I mean, certainly, obviously the board, the entire executive team has to be on board with this, but like, there also should be like one throat to choke, so to speak,
Yes.
somebody who's really leading
Yes.
this transformation. What role do you think that?
Yes. So this is
is.
why we've seen in the last 5 years, since I was a chief data officer for Western Digital, but since then we are seeing this massive growth of jobs entering the C-suite, which is the chief data officer or the chief science officer or the chief AI officer or the chief scientific officer. These jobs are coming in massively now. If you just Google and see how many chief data officers have grown in the last, just 3 years, the numbers are pretty amazing, right? Big growth there. Everyone's hiring a chief data officer. PG&E is hiring a chief data officer. Everyone's trying to get on top of their data and trying to run their business more intelligently. So it is primarily the chief data officer, chief science officer, chief AI officer. It's a little bit different from your CIO. It's partnered with the CIO, but the CIO is traditionally more vendor management and all of that stuff. The CDO is really responsible for making the DNA of the business more data driven.
Yeah. And I think, one thing I'm hearing you say is traditionally a lot of the tech leadership roles, like a CIO, even a CTO, they're typically seen as supporting roles, right? They're supporting, like, the business kind of comes up with their ideas, and then like the CIO sort of makes it happen. Or if there's some large strategy, the CTO is figuring out what innovative tools are out there that can kind of help the company move towards that overall strategy. But I hear you saying something a little bit different, which is like a chief data scientist or a chief data officer is no longer just a supporting role to the business. They also should be coming up with their own ideas, right? Like trying to pull the company towards a more data-driven culture, and actually, putting, say, models at the forefront of decision making that potentially can open up new revenue streams, and the like. Did I have that right?
That's absolutely right. So exactly, Dave. What I'm talking about is the chief data officer is not just tasked with doing a supporting role like a traditional CIO, but is chartered with creating the new cash cow for the company, right?
Right.
Like if there's an existing business, that's great, but let's mine the data and let's actually work with strategy, chief strategy officer, CEO of the company, and let's figure out what are some new businesses we can incubate from our position of strength, from our position of core business, right? What are some of these new businesses that needs to take off based on our data, based on our customers, based on what we see as top line revenue growth, what we see our competition doing, or we see our strength in the marketplace? How do we grow these other businesses that we can go into adjacent markets and play very well at?
100%.
So, for example, Uber is a great example, right? Uber started out as transportation disrupting completely the taxi industry, and then it's Uber Eats. And it'll continue to be many, many Uber things as we go on, right? And so who would think that Uber would go into Uber Eats? But it's a very natural adjacent business to when you think about Uber coming and picking you up from your home. Uber is now delivering food. Uber might deliver groceries. Uber might do a lot more. Uber might help you with your post office errands. Who knows? You know what I mean? It can just go into all of these different things. That's ultimately what is Uber out there doing. It's trying to save you time and transportation. So what are all the other areas you might want to go do? Maybe you'll have a monthly subscription and Uber will do everything for you. Take you to your doctor's office, do your groceries. You've got an Uber at your beck and call, right?
Right.
It's not unimaginable to think of a business like that. That would be a great prospect for Uber.
Yeah, for sure. So let's switch gears a little bit. You sort of sold me on the autonomous enterprise. I think many DSLs out there are trying to get to a place where they're no longer just in a supporting role, but they're actually coming up with new strategies, and are actually pushing the business in new strategic directions. But once you've sort of gotten that, you sort of changed that culture, I think the next step is trying to figure out which. The chief data officer has 50 projects that, she has sort of put together. Like, how do you go about prioritizing those projects? I think you have a particular point of view on this. I'd love to dive into that.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. This is an excellent question that you ask. Yes, you're right, because many companies are unable to focus and prioritize on the 1, 2, 3 projects that will give them top line revenue. I always think that there's a framework to do these sort of assessments. One of the frameworks I've used very successfully in the past is around assessing these top strategic use cases. And the assessment comes with a certain ranking score. And so we rank these use cases based on what is the strategic importance to the company if we do this use case. Next, we talk about the feasibility of that use case. Like, can we actually execute on this use case? Is there enough data? Is there enough technological support to be able to go tackle this use case? Then we actually talk about ROI. What kind of ROI are we going to get from this strategic use case? Is it tens of millions of dollars? Is it hundreds of millions of dollars? What are we talking about in terms of numbers? And then we actually talk about the investment required for the strategic use case. And also we talk about consumption. If we were wildly successful, what would that consumption model look like? What would that scale look like? So evaluate it on 3 to 4 different scoring mechanisms. And then those strategic use cases that surface to the top based on those high scores, you pick 1, 2, or 3 of them and start executing.
So let me make sure. I was taking notes here. So it sounds like, first of all, is it strategic? So does it align with like your company's sort of strategic goals, right? And then the next question is like the feasibility. So do you actually have the data, or you're lacking the data and need to go find it somewhere else? And also, I imagine, is it curated? Is it usable? What state is that? Is the quality high, et cetera? And then the next thing you need to think about is the ROI, right? So what sort of investment needs to be made in order, for this project to sort of go live? And then, potentially what is it? Is it going to be lowering? Is the goal here to sort of become more efficient and lower costs in some way, or is this actually like some sort of a product where it's actually generating revenue? Is it a new service? And then the last thing I heard you say is just how is this project going to be consumed, right? So when it does go live, when you roll this into production, is it, I don't know, is it an API endpoint? Is it, I think, a data product where you're sending a cultivated sort of data feed to an external party? Like, how does it actually reach the end consumer or whoever the intended audience is? And any one of those things, I think, if it doesn't have a high score, it can bump it down the list, right? So it sounds like, if you look at all of those things and you sort of rank them on a scale of 1 to 5 or whatever, then that's a good sort of lens by which to help prioritize what you should work on next. Great. Well, it sounds like I nailed it. Well, I learned a lot today, Janet. I really appreciate you taking the time. I learned a lot about the autonomous enterprise, and if I want to learn more, I mean, you're writing a book. So when can, like, what is the best way for me to for our audience to sort of read the book?
So, various chapters of the book are already published on LinkedIn right now. So I've already gone through all the way up to chapter 9 in terms of articles. So I'm putting out there in small articles so people can read each article starting from, hey, I'm at point 1. I'm at this adopt or die position. I need to adopt. I need to go move to where the markets are moving, where the leaders are moving, where competition is moving. Start from there. That's chapter 1. Then look at your maturity assessment, look at your business strategy, look at your culture, look at your talent assessment. How do you assess your talent? Look at how do you pick, what are the tenets to modernize your infrastructure, so on and so forth. Then from your modernization, go into how do you create an advanced center of excellence? What does that advanced center of excellence look like under a CDO or a chief scientific officer? And then what are the components within that center of excellence? How do you pick what to execute on once you have your center of excellence? And then go from there. So those are the articles that I've already written. Those are the chapters 1 through 9, and the others are coming. So I'll actually be winding up with a bunch of use cases that have actually brought top-line revenue for a lot of the customers as well.
Very interesting. So, the bottom line is go to Janet George, go to her LinkedIn page, and if you look at sort of her activity feed, you can see all the chapters there. And it sounds like there's more coming, specifically use cases. So, for those in the audience who want to learn more about Janet, go to her LinkedIn page and learn more there. So, thank you so much, Janet. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Dave. It was a pleasure.